Hi everyone. Today we'll be presenting on the information behavior of immigrants and mixed status families. There were an estimated 43.2 million immigrants living in the U.S. in 2015. The population breaks down as follows: 13.5% European and Canadian, 26.8% Mexican, 26.9% Asian, 24.2% other immigrants from Latin America, and 8.6% immigrants from other regions. So what is a mixed status family? A mixed status family is a family with at least one unauthorized adult and one U.S. citizen child. About a quarter of all immigrants in the U.S. are unauthorized. 6.6 million people are in families with at least one unauthorized immigrant, and 9 million people are in mixed status families. Mixed status families experience marginalization as a unit. Undocumented status impacts documented family members, creating a need for secrecy, limiting mobility, and discouraging seeking assistance that some members may qualify for out of fear of family separation. Racialized rhetoric views citizen children and mixed status families as illegitimate citizens. Actions by politicians may target citizen children of mixed status families directly, as when Texas stopped issuing birth certificates to undocumented parents between 2013 to 2016. Undocumented immigrants experience low levels of social trust, and this is passed on to their descendants. They may limit contact with non-immigrants and engage in patterns associated with information poverty. For example, in her research, Chapman references a Mexican immigrant who has decided to have no contact with Americans except at work as a self-protective measure after her neighbors disappear. With a limited network, it can be difficult to get correct information. Also, immigrants may become victims of those purposefully targeting them with misinformation, as in the case of notario fraud, which relies on the misperception that a notary in the U.S. can practice law like a notario público in Latin America. Victims may be too scared to report the fraud, and it can be hard to know where to turn to for help. It can lead to incorrectly filed paperwork, making them subject to deportation and losing thousands of dollars. Here's a quick summary of some of the barriers to information access mixed status families may encounter. The need for self-protection and secrecy, so not being able to share information about needs. Fear of contact with institutions, anti-immigrant sentiment that reinforces a lack of social trust, language barriers, institutional barriers such as the inability to get certain forms of ID, tech barriers for older generations, and misinformation such as assumptions that they can't access certain things or predatory misinformation. One of the ways mixed status families may negotiate information poverty is through having a family member who may have more access because of language status or tech skills act as an information mediary. Lay information mediaries seek information on behalf of others, and the practice has been seen in medical information seeking. LIM may be related to gender and closeness of relationship. In a study on evacuation practices of undocumented Mexican families during Hurricane Ike, it was shown that children with undocumented parents acted as bridges and were able to obtain accurate evacuation information. So in mixed status families, information mediaries may be children. I interviewed 3 immigrants from mixed status families. One immigrant was from Mexico, one from Poland, and one from Guatemala. Most information tends to focus on Mexican immigrants, so I felt it was important to expand. 2 were women, 1 was a man. 2 were currently documented in a mixed status family, 2 were formerly undocumented. 1 had been the only undocumented family member in a mixed status family. It was easier to find formerly undocumented participants who talk about their experience than it was to find currently undocumented participants. In order for this to be truly representative, I would need to include more people. But here are some of the things that I found. There's a preference for online sources among participants, with one participant stating that he prefers online to TV or radio because he can react and share his opinions and it makes him feel less helpless. Consumption of news was mostly in English, while family members consumed news in their original language. 2 participants preferred news from outside of the U.S. Libraries were mostly viewed as a source of entertainment. Positivity was expressed when a library had access to books in their original language for their family. There was a feeling that their family relies on them for information among the 2 female participants. The participant from Poland said she remembered calling credit card companies for her mother when she was 8 or 9 years old. She said she feels pride that her family calls her sprytna, which means clever in Polish. The male participant felt he relied more on his mother for information, raising the possibility that information mediary behavior in mixed status families could be gendered. There was a feeling among the female participants that they helped their family deal with misinformation. The participant from Mexico said her family heard on Spanish language media that U.S. citizen children would no longer be able to apply for their parents, which she corrected as not true. The participant from Poland says that with her family, she helps dispel racialized misinformation about other immigrants and perceptions that changes to immigration laws would not affect them and would only target Hispanic immigrants. The male participant focuses on dispelling misinformation about immigrants among non-immigrants. He was undocumented for 15 years and paid taxes with an ITIN number, and said he becomes particularly upset at the notion that immigrants don't pay taxes. Reliable lawyers and other professionals were found through social service organizations, word of mouth, and in the case of the Polish participant, Polish language newspapers. With regards to language barriers, one participant said she uses her smartphone to translate for herself. One translates for friends and family, and one said that as a Guatemalan, he felt he had to learn 2 languages when he came to the U.S., English and Mexican Spanish, in order to fit in with a mostly Mexican network. With regards to the impact of a change in status, one said that she felt her family members who are no longer undocumented feared information less. And the participant who said he had been the only undocumented member of a mixed status family said it made him more comfortable sharing information about himself. So this is just a potential model for how information mediaries in mixed status families may operate. A family member encounters barriers or information they are unsure from an institution. Then the information mediary family member evaluates the information and possibly the institution retrieving the needed information. This information is communicated back to the information seeker. The pattern may happen several times with information passing to and from the seeker to the institution through the intermediary. In the context of libraries, policies such as requiring IDs that are inaccessible to undocumented immigrants may also restrict access for U.S. citizen children, cutting off access to children regardless of status in mixed status families when they may act as information mediaries enforces a state of information poverty. YA author Erica L. Sanchez, who advocates for library access for undocumented immigrants, says, "My books largely deal with the obstacles of undocumented immigrants. Knowing that they may not have access bothers me on a profound level. All Americans, regardless of their legal status, are entitled to knowledge. Everyone needs to have access to books. Historically, this hasn't been true, but let's make it so." And so here are some suggestions for working with mixed status families. Mixed status families rely on a need for secrecy and word of mouth, so make sure you are not unnecessarily inquiring about status. Encourage people to tell friends about library services and programming. More research is necessary on mixed status families outside of the Mexican community. The needs of other communities may be ignored if only one community is the face of mixed status families. There's a need for awareness of restrictions created by requiring certain documents. There is a need for awareness of information mediary behavior among family members and children. Connect to social service organizations and partner with them for outreach, resources, and citizenship and ESL workshops to increase social capital. Hire a diverse staff with multilingual skills. There's a lot of misinformation and negative rhetoric about mixed status families, so correct misinformation if the opportunity arises. And importantly, if someone is looking for a lawyer or legal advice, direct them to a social service agency that can help. And so here are some of my references. And thank you for listening.